Welcome in. It's another edition of Where the 99 Lead. I'm Andrew Joyce, your host, and Where the 99 Lead. It's a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, where we talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville, academics, athletics. We talk about the Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine and Where the 99 Lead. The title of this program refers to the historic 99 steps that lead to the University of Pikeville campus from the community, but also lead from the campus into the community and into the world. Two special guests today, undergrad students at the University of Pikeville and fresh from a mission trip to Mexico. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce first Colin McCoy. Welcome in.
Nice to meet you. My name is Colin McCoy. I'm from Inez, Kentucky, about an hour away. I'm a sophomore up at UPike. I came here to play soccer, and that kind of just dwindled away. So now I really like to get involved with the clubs on campus, and especially Blessed Unity of God is where I feel like a big calling in my life is.
It's called Bug.
Bug, yep.
I've heard it referred to as Bug,
Yeah.
but now, and those that are tuned in, understand what Bug stands for. You came from Inez to the University of Pikeville. Why did you choose UPike?
The main reason I chose UPike was I had a lot of friends that were going to Moorhead, because that's where a lot of people go from where I'm from.
Sure.
But UPike is it's closer to home, and also it's a place where I can start new. It's a place where I can go and completely be myself without having all those old attachments that was once part of my life. And also, with the soccer scholarship that I received, it was actually cheaper for me to go to UPike. So
Sure.
That's what originally made me go to UPike, but it's mostly my calling that I feel is on campus is what made me stay at UPike.
Right. Colin, you come to the University of Pikeville. Soccer, a big reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think many high school athletes at some point in their college career, they may finish a college career playing athletics, but at some point, whether it's during our undergrad years or when that is complete, we realize that we're probably not going to be making our living playing those sports. While it's enjoyable, keeps us focused, we have to lock into what our career choice might be down the road.
Exactly.
And what's your major? What do you want to do in the future?
My major is high school. I want to be a high school teacher, and my major is in social studies. So I'm going to go back to Sheldon Clark one day and start a boys soccer team there, because there actually wasn't a boys soccer team at my high school. The way that I got into the sport was playing in rec leagues and things like that.
Right.
So that's really one of my major goals, is to go back and get to kind of allow soccer to grow back home. So.
Colin McCoy of Inez, Kentucky, and wants to be a high school teacher. It's a question I have to ask. Those that want to go into teaching many times are influenced by someone that was a teacher during our career, whether it's elementary school or high school. Who was an influence in your life?
Well, actually, my dad has 5 sisters, and 4 of them were teachers. So as my whole life I spent trying to avoid going into the teaching profession. And then after my senior year, I had my first cousin actually as a teacher for 3 years in a row for different English classes, and my senior year really made me realize how much I like being in high school. Really, I mean, I know it would be completely different, but I just love the atmosphere. And actually, the summer after my senior year, I had a job where I worked at a summer camp for smaller kids. They were around age 8 to 15, and that made me really realize that I would love to spend the rest of my life helping kids and influencing their lives, as I think I did those kids at the summer camps. But I realized that my calling is for older students, not 8 to 15, but more 15 to 18. I feel like I can make more of an impact that way.
Sure. Colin McCoy, UPike sophomore from Inez, and allow us to introduce Sierra Kaiser with the University of Pikeville. Sierra, welcome in. Let's hear a little about your background.
Thank you for having me today. I'm originally from Jenkins, Kentucky, graduated from Jenkins High School, and actually also came to UPike on a softball scholarship.
Oh.
And then after my first 2 years, I found myself being given opportunity, and I just felt like it was time to kind of prioritize and see where my future was going to be held. And
Sure.
as much as I love sports, I knew that's something that I can't live on, playing the rest of my life. But it works because I'm a junior sports management major. So I will still have that impact in my life.
One of the new majors on campus, and those that are sports minded, I know it's been very popular. Tell us about some of the classes you've had in your sports management program.
Some of the classes I've had are facilities management, business application, sports management, the literal
Sure.
foundation. And it's really opened my eyes to see everything outside of the field or off the court.
Right.
Just all the backgrounds, and it's just something that really sparks my interest, and I'm really super happy with the decision I made to follow through with it.
What do you want to do with it in the future?
Ideally, I want to be an athletic director, but I'm actually secretly torn. I'm also a firefighter for the city of Pikeville. So that's also another route that I may take.
Interesting. Of course, athletes, they can follow their dreams through sports management and being an athlete on the field, playing sports growing up. Have you been surprised by the business aspect of sports as you've learned about in sports management?
I really am. I'm completely overwhelmed with the business aspect because I had no idea everything that happened behind the scenes the way that it did, and everything that has to go through like certain aspects in order to get everything up and running.
Sure. And I'll ask you the same question that I asked Colin. Colin comes from Inez, you come from Jenkins, two bordering counties to the University of Pikeville. But why did you choose UPike?
I chose UPike because it gave me the opportunity to have an affordable education in my home in the mountains.
Sure. Of course, Jenkins just up the road now.
Yeah, about 35 minutes.
The new roads, of course, Inez too. New roads traveling to both of those communities, and it makes it very accessible. And I know a lot of students do like to stay closer to home, and UPike certainly affordable. We talk about Bears on Mission. While many of your fellow students may have traveled to Kansas City or they were in the sun and the sand during spring break, you guys spent spring break and your break from classes doing mission work. Sierra, first tell us about UPike's Bears on a Mission.
It's actually a funny story about how Bears on a Mission kind of came up. Originally, last January, we had a group who just had a sudden spark of interest in mission work.
Yes.
And so we had a group of kids just go to Haiti. Well, later on in the fall, we took a group to Detroit. And we actually got introduced in their church as Bears on a Mission.
Yes.
So we just kind of stuck with it and went with it. And
Sure.
since then, we just open ourselves to serve wherever it is that's needed.
Very good. Bears on a Mission, and I would imagine it consists of more than just you two.
Yeah.
Tell us about the group.
We have a very diverse group. We have new members that come in each trip. We average anywhere between 16 to 20 people each trip,
Sure.
but definitely different personalities, but all works for the greater good together.
Absolutely. And you've been on different mission trips. You mentioned a group of students had gone to Haiti and also Detroit. This time the trip went where?
Piedras Negras, Mexico, which is right on the border as you cross over Eagle Pass, Texas.
Okay. And you were telling us before we went on air that you did not fly on this mission trip. Tell us about the travels.
We had a wonderful 26 hours traveling in 2 vans full of 19 people who had attended the trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how comfortable are those vans on a 26-hour trip?
Not really all that comfortable, but when you are conked out half the way, I'm sure you'd have no idea what's going on around you.
Colin, Sierra, both of you, talk about what went on the mission trip to Mexico.
Well, we first got there after what felt like 2 weeks on the vans. We got there and we were already worn out. I think we arrived around 2 o'clock in the morning or
Right.
something like that. We had problems with border and trying to get our U-Haul across, so we just had a rough night. And then we got there, and the next morning we were starting work at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we got up and then had devotional and had our cereal pretty much for breakfast. And after that we went, I'd say it was about 15 minutes down the road to a pastor's house. I think his name was Pastor Juan. I can't remember for sure. He's a very elderly man. I think he's around 75, they said, but he's a hard 75. He's
Sure.
really worn down, you can see. But a while back, the parsonages, the place he lives, is connected to the church that he's in charge of, and the parsonage actually burnt down part of it a while back, and there's a downstairs and an upstairs. The whole upstairs was burned. It was just stones and windows pretty much, and so him and his wife are both living downstairs in a really small confined space, and we spent the week pretty much. We had some issues at first with some materials and things, but when we had the issues with materials, there was always something we found to do. Like we ended up painting every window and all the doors in this place, and did a little bit of concrete work and stuff like that. And after that, when they got the materials in, we finally started. It was mostly people from the community that were helping, but we were giving the materials to them and stuff. They got the roof put onto the parsonages, and we also got the windows put up and all the doorways and everything. And then our whole week was pretty much just spent doing whatever he needed around there to get ready to move back upstairs, because once we got the windows and stuff, he was ready to go. But we did some work downstairs too with they had to use styrofoam as insulation in the ceilings there, and a lot of the styrofoam had burnt with the fire, so we spent a lot of time pretty much tearing out the whole ceiling and getting them ready so they can replaster and re-styrofoam the ceiling. So I think it was a huge blessing to him.
Sure. Your first time out of the country?
My second time after Haiti.
Okay. So Haiti to Mexico. And Sierra, of course, you go on a mission trip. You travel 26 hours in vans, quite uncomfortable, and you travel to Mexico. How did you decide on, or how did the Bears on Mission decide on this destination?
This destination, one, was to give us an experience of the border life. Because as soon as you cross over the border, you know, it's two totally different worlds, and you get to see just different ways people live. But also, Piedras Negras actually translates into black stone, making them a co-producing community. And we too live in a co-producing community. So it was a very unique place to see, you know, similarities and the differences.
Sure. How were you welcomed there?
Well, like Colin said, we had a little bit of trouble going over the border the first time, and it was really late getting in, but just the hospitality of Pastor Julio, which is who we actually stayed with there, the hospitality of him and just our group leaders was just overwhelming, because I felt so bad to show up so late, so early in the morning, but they were still full of love and full of welcome.
Sure.
One thing that was so different with everything was, how you said, it was different than Haiti, because in Haiti, people were glad to see us. They were welcoming us into their homes and things like that. And in Mexico, the people aren't like meaner or anything, but it's more about, that's what the group leaders talked to us extensively about, was it's about building relationships with the people. Like we helped, on the last day, we helped a random man in the community with some things around his house. But before we could even step foot onto his property, our group leader had to make conversation with him and actually get to know the man and get to know where he was from. And it's all about building the relationship. That's one thing they said. If we get no work done, as long as we leave with the relationship, then we've done them tremendous blessings. So that's one thing that really struck me, was how they care more about the relationship they're building with us than they do about the work we're doing for them.
Right. Colin McCoy, Sierra Kaiser, our guest on this edition of Where the 99 Lead. We talk about Bears on Mission, fresh from spring break, and not your typical spring break, but spent doing mission work in Mexico, just across the border. Sierra, Colin, you're both no strangers to mission work. Let's talk about where your experiences have taken you, and why do you choose to be a part of these missions? Colin, let's start with you.
My experiences, I'm a little less experienced than Sierra, but my experiences have just taken me, my first time out of the country was in January to Haiti. I really wanted to go to Detroit last year, but things just didn't fall into place for that, and I ended up having to go home over fall break. So my first experience was in Haiti, and then I'll be honest with you, going into Haiti, there were, like, pretty much just on the drive in, I was like, what did I get myself into, and why am I doing this? Because it was such a culture shock. I guess I was kind of so struck by it. I'm like, I'm ready to go home. I don't want to be here.
Sure.
Within my first 24 hours, I knew that mission work was a huge calling in my life, and I knew that that's one thing. It might not be the major thing I would spend the rest of my life doing, but it's something that I always want to make sure that I can and will be able to do. And then, like you said, going to Piedras Negras was just, it was kind of another situation like that for me. At first, I wasn't planning on going, but then I get thrown into, I wouldn't say I got thrown into it. I did a little bit of fundraising and got all the money, and I'm like, well, I guess this is God's way of telling me that's where I'm going over my spring break, and I don't regret it one bit.
Sure. Sierra, let's hear about some of your experiences.
I have been very fortunate to have been on every single mission trip that the college has had to offer. My very first trip was in last January to Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and it was actually a trip that had a huge impact on the rest of my life, where I gave my heart to the Lord on that trip. And since that trip, I've just had such a love for mission work, and I feel so called to just go wherever it is that God leads me to. And since then, He's taken me again to Haiti for a second time,
Sure.
Detroit, Mexico, even just down the road to Signature Home Health Care.
Right.
But it's just something that it overwhelms my heart to see. And originally had the intention as just a resume builder, but I fell in love with all the work that was being done.
You talk about mission trips and traveling out of the country, and you travel across the border to Mexico, and you travel distances within the country, and then you mentioned a local type mission, doing work locally in a nursing facility. How important is that to mission work besides the long travel and the trips going out of the country, say?
You don't have to go 26 hours away or just halfway across the world to do mission work. You can go right down the road to your neighbor's house, where like you can go to the nursing home. Mission work is just allowing yourself to be open and willing to serve.
Sure.
To those who are in need. And some places might have a greater need than others, but it's just the passion and the beauty of allowing yourself to be someone's helping hand.
Absolutely. This mission team is a unique group. We've talked a little about the group, the size of the group, how it came to be. Talk about your fellow students who joined you and the long trip to Mexico.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, we have totally polar opposite personalities that went on this trip, and huge age differences, whether we have 16-year-old high school students that may have traveled or up to juniors and seniors in college.
Sure.
And you have all these different people from all these different backgrounds, all these different beliefs, but everything just meshes together like yin and yang. All these opposites come together to unify as a whole, and it's because of the different personalities that you can reach out and help in so many more ways.
Right. Not just helping other people, but how does it develop you as an individual?
I've said this since my first mission trip. I've originally had always went down there wanting to help someone else, and I come back and they've helped me so much more in return.
Right.
And it's just a huge reality check as one, but two, it's just the sharing of fellowship and love. It totally changes your outlook on everything that you come back to.
Sure. Colin, on these mission trips, what have you learned about yourself?
Like I mentioned a minute ago, when I went to Haiti, I was so excited before I left, and then once I got there, I had all these doubts going in my head saying, this is what I'm called to do, this is going to be a terrible week, I want to go back home. But it was there that I realized that's what I'm called to do. I'm called to mission work. I'm called to helping people. I've learned that, like Sierra said, I've learned that you don't go on mission trips expecting to change the world. Even in the two small communities we worked in Haiti and then in Piedras Negras, those two small communities, we might have helped them, but we didn't change their world. We didn't go in and take $1 million to them and say, here you go, live happy the rest of your life.
Sure.
We went in and we showed the love of Christ through us and just gave them the opportunity to see that we're not the American cash cow that comes down and gives them all these things. We're just a group of people who have a desire to help others and have a desire to, like the old bracelets used to say, what would Jesus do? We have the opportunity to show what Christ would do just by whether it's picking up trash out of a man's yard or something like that. And that's one thing I've learned. You never go on a mission trip to expect to change the world. You go on a mission trip expecting to be changed, because both the ones I've been on, I have been changed more than I think I've changed anyone else's life.
Colin, you traveled to Piedras Negras, Mexico, which translates to black stones, a reference to the coal deposits that exist in that area. Why was that location chosen?
Actually, the Piedras Negras, the black stones part, was kind of an added bonus. I was talking to the chaplain about it, and he said that what happened, he called the organization we went through, which was the Nazarene Church. I'm not sure what the actual organization was called, But he called them and he said, he's like, we want to go on the border. Where is the most help needed? And they told us it was in Piedras Negras in that area. And it's closer. It's not like it's over on like the California or Arizona border. So, I mean, even though it's 26 hours, it's still closer than the 48 it would have taken us to go anywhere else. But it's also where the most help was needed, and that's what we want to do. We wanted to help as much as we possibly could within a week, and that's where they said they wanted us to go. But I think it was also a good experience with it being the coal town, because it's a different kind of coal than we're used to. Me and Sierra have probably both been on a strip job before,
Sure.
riding four-wheelers or anything, and it's completely different there. Like, we didn't get to see a coal mine, but I know that they weren't digging into hills because there were none. You could see miles ahead of you. So I think that it was just crazy to see, and it was also such a big city, and because I mean most coal mining towns are relatively small, like Pikeville or Little Old Inez. So it was really good to see the different type of culture around a coal mining town too.
Sure. Or little old Jenkins,
Yeah.
one of those coal towns. Sierra Kaiser and Colin McCoy, our guests on this edition of Where the 99 Lead. We talk about Bears on Mission. These two UPike undergrad students fresh from a spring break mission trip to Piedras Negras, Mexico. And Sierra, you've talked about traveling to Haiti and Mexico. How was the language barrier in Mexico different from Haiti? Was it easier to communicate since we're more familiar with Spanish?
Yeah. For me personally, I had a really hard time. I guess it was my mountain accent and those rolling of the R's.
Sure.
That's something I can't do.
The rolling R's doesn't translate to hillbilly, does it?
No.
I've
not
tried
at
it too. I agree.
So I think I personally picked up on the Creole in Haiti way better than I ever did the Spanish in Mexico. But when it comes to language barrier, even though we may say things or words that we don't understand
Sure.
with one another while we were there, it's just the love of fellowship, of just whether it be playing soccer with the kids
Right.
or working side by side, hammering out walls with a fellow Hispanic.
Sure.
It's just words aren't needed when it comes to language barriers.
Right. There are ways to get past that, is there not? Colin, in addition to the language barrier, how was the trip different from your mission trip to Haiti?
Especially, I'll just touch on the language barrier for a second. I think it was a little easier because they offer Spanish in most high schools. You don't see Creole in most Eastern Kentucky high schools,
Right.
especially. So, I mean, the language was a lot easier for me. I still hardly know any Creole whatsoever. But as far as being different, the level of poverty wasn't as universally extreme as it was in Haiti. In Haiti, 90% of the people you saw were living in extreme poverty. And I'm not saying in Piedras Negras they're living like kings. I'm saying that most of them know where their next meal is coming from, for sure. In Haiti, you don't have that security, really. And it was just amazing to see that the little town. It was amazing to see that the people were still so loving and so caring once they got to know us and once we built those relationships. And even though we couldn't speak to each other, especially through the host family that were amazing to us, people trusted us and people felt like we were just there to help them and we weren't there to hurt them. Because honestly, I think one thing that's especially different in Piedras Negras, where it's on the border and everybody hears about how rough the border life is and things.
Right.
Of course, in Haiti they have it rough, but they don't have the gangs and things like that some people might experience on the border. And I feel like in Piedras Negras you have people they're less likely to trust people because of things like that. In Haiti, they're used to people coming in and helping them, especially since the earthquake in 2010. It's been especially American after American coming in to help them. In Piedras Negras, they've been alone for so long, and anybody they have trusted has done them wrong. So they're more shy. They're easier to shy away from us than the people were in Haiti.
A little less trusting.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sierra, in Haiti, a lot of the children you served were in an orphanage. Do you have anything to add about the town or the families that you spent time with in Mexico?
The children that we spent time with in Mexico, we actually didn't work with an orphanage, but the town in which we actually work in had problems of flooding, and with the flooding, diseases were set up, and it did kill some of the children's parents.
Sure.
So it was very normal to see younger girls, like 11 or 12, and even younger boys, taking care of their baby brothers and sisters, taking on like a parenting role at such a young age. That's something that was very common there, and it was just kind of made me think it was time for myself to grow up too, with them being that young, taking on that role.
Sure. Have to grow up quickly in those type of situations. Colin, to prepare for the trip, you discussed how life is different on each side of the border. What did you see as you traveled from southern Texas into northern Mexico besides the additional time you spent at the border?
We actually we were told by Rob Music, our chaplain, to watch a documentary about border life, and I'll be honest, I don't remember what it was called, but it was a guy who lived the border life and knows what it's like, kind of in a setting like this, just talking back and forth, but he didn't really prepare us for what we saw.
Sure.
Once we got in Texas, things were pretty much the same as they are here, with a little drop of Hispanic in it. Most things you saw were in English and Spanish, but that's really the only major difference. But once we cross the border, everything is different, from the people you see to just the buildings that are just what the buildings look like. Even the buildings that are more modernized and more American are still have their own Spanish touch to them, and it's crazy, but. There was a major difference once we crossed the border, and once we crossed the border into the Mexican side, they had soldiers standing there, and I mean, you wouldn't think it, but you really didn't see them on the American side. Like on the Spanish side, they were in their camo and they had guns and everything.
Sure.
And on the American side, they didn't, and that's one thing that really kind of hit us. It's like, oh, things are serious now. We're here. It was a pretty big town, so I would say that it's even more advanced than once you get into central Mexico and things.
How glad were you to be back on United States ground?
Well, we actually got turned around the first night we came in, so we went into Mexico and then turned back around, and we were back on United States ground again, and then we had to go back to Mexico the same night. But once we got back, it was kind of, I mean, you would think I'd be glad, but I kind of missed it. I'm kind of like, I feel like there's more I could have done, and
sure.
I kind of wish I wouldn't be able to go back.
Sierra, we're just about out of time, but I understand you both met a special lady who lived in the town. Tell us about Armana Marina.
Armana Marina is one of the most godly, heartfelt women I've ever met in my life. She lives a clear life of poverty. She has little. She is with a sister who stays with her that's dying of cancer. But she opened not just her life and her relationship with us, but she opened her home to us.
Right.
And throughout the week, we had up to 110 children that came to Vacation Bible School. We had, maybe some of the mothers or the fathers or brothers and sisters that came with those children, as well as ourselves. And she went out of the way to make sure she fixed special meals for us. And she just would tell us how beautiful and how much she loved us. And it was just like a mother figure. Like, I feel like she's been with me my whole life.
Sure.
She's just a beautiful woman.
Colin, what's next for Bears on Mission?
I actually just talked to the chaplain here recently, and he said, really, right now we could go anywhere. He's thinking about maybe a late summer trip, but for sure over fall break, he mentioned Chicago, D.C., another inter-American mission trip. And
sure.
Really, from here, it's just wherever God leads us.
And you're going to sign up.
First one.
Every opportunity.
Yes, sir.
You've been tuned to Where the 99 Lead. Our special guest today, UPike undergrads Colin McCoy and Sierra Kaiser, fresh from Bears on a Mission as they travel to Piedras Negras, Mexico. And you've been tuned to Where the 99 Lead, a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, the leading university of Central Appalachia. On behalf of the University of Pikeville, I'm Andrew Joyce. Thanks for tuning in.